Now, in its day, the Intercity 125 was a glimpse into the future, a high-speed train that could do 125 miles an hour. In the 70s, it completely transformed the image of British Rail. Well, now, a group of enthusiasts have decided to preserve this piece of railway heritage by restoring the first prototype of the high-speed train.
This is a train that hasn't gone anywhere for a long time. And trying to get an old girl like this going, well, it takes some doing.
It's early morning in York, and 40 years after it was built, an historic train from the 1970s has been shunted back onto the rails. This is a prototype cab designed 40 years ago when British Rail started work on a brand new high-speed train. The brakes need adjusting. It's the first time in 30 years Powercar 41001, which used to be the fastest diesel in the world, has run along the railway.
Yes, that's it.
Got it?
Oh, is it stopped? I think that's it.
Shunted out of its old home at the National Railway Museum, the prototype cab is getting a new lease of life.
It's basically been sat in a museum for the past 27, 28 years. So the time is now right for us to get it back working again.
At the end of its 25-mile journey, the cab arrives at Neville Hill Railway Depot in Leeds, where a restoration programme will begin.
It was extremely smooth, and we got up to about 60 miles an hour, which is the maximum permitted speed we could run at. But no problems at all.
Take my word for it, rail buffs absolutely love this train. But what's so special about it? Well, to find that out, we have to go back 50 years to an era of the Beatles, the miniskirt, and a nationalised railway system.
So tired of waiting, tired of waiting for you.
In 1968, the Transport Minister, Barbara Castle, visited British Rail to give her public backing to a new high-speed train, capable of travelling at more than 100 miles an hour.
Hey, lady, forget all that. Meet the swinging, mixing, mincing, slicing, shredding Kenwood chef. Woo!
One of Britain's leading designers was called in. Kenneth Grange supplied the look for products which became household names. He was asked to sort out the paintwork on the cab of the new train, but he did a lot more than that.
I had time enough to play games, and I chose myself to have a crack at a new shape of train.
Without telling British Rail, Grange used sophisticated aerodynamic testing for the first time in the design of a train.
It's a pretty extraordinary tale on reflection that they were, broad-minded enough and open-minded enough to take some note of what I was saying.
By 1972, the project looked like a big success. The prototype was complete and final tests on the railways had begun. In June 1973, the new train broke a world speed record by reaching 143 miles an hour on a stretch of line between York and Darlington.
So, Kenneth Grange had done his work. The whole thing looked set. This was going to be a high-speed express for the 1970s. But of course, this kind of thing never runs smoothly, does it?
The prototype was a one-man cab with a small central window, but trouble broke out with the drivers' union ASLEF. They refused to test the new train.
This proposal was put before our annual conference in June. The delegates attending that annual conference were actual train drivers, people who were driving trains day in, day out, said, "Not on your life."
The unions came back and had changed their mind, or some cause, but whatever it was, and were insisting upon two men, which threw us in a real dilemma, because this single glass size was very difficult to resolve. You couldn't have them, two men looking out of the one little window.
And that was the end of the line for the prototype. Kenneth Grange redesigned the cab for a two-man crew. He came up with the instantly recognisable Intercity 125, streamlined with no front buffers. The record-breaking prototype was almost forgotten. But 40 years on, rail enthusiasts are trying to get the prototype back into working order. First of all, they've got to put in a new engine.
We have an engine ourselves which is ready to go that we'll then drop into this, and after we've completed all our other work, we hopefully should be able to get it started up and get the train to move again under its own power.
The 125's power came from its engine, the Paxman Valenta.
To put it into layman's terms, the engine in your car is somewhere between 1 and 2 litres. This is 79-litre engine, V12, with a turbocharger on it.
Variations of this engine were also used by the Royal Navy in boats and submarines. For the 125 prototype, the engine was new and untested, but it gave the train the speed it needed.
I think it's an icon of the 70s and served us extremely well for coming on to 40 years now. And I think as we have all the components we need to get it back working, the time is right to do it.
At Neville Hill, the old engine is being lifted out of the prototype. It's a difficult operation. It weighs 14 tonnes. It's 3 months later, and a replacement engine has been installed. But the cab won't be back on the rails just yet.
The really tricky part was attaching the alternator to this engine, this blue Valenta. But to be honest, the procedure of actually lifting it back in and bolting it in place went pretty smoothly.
30 volunteers are working on the project, raising money wherever they can.
In your day job, you're a train driver.
I am, yes.
So this
yeah.
is a trainman's holiday, is it?
Some would say I'm a glutton for punishment.
Yeah.
I think they're probably right. But yes, I drive trains from London to Leeds and Newcastle. I drive 125s.
So just reassure us, when it is finished, it will have a roof on it, won't it?
Oh yes, there'll be a roof.
World's first cabriolet train. Thank you very much, John.
It's a big day at Neville Hill. The cab's designer, Kenneth Grange, is in Leeds. He's seeing his prototype for the first time in 40 years.
References we would have used in the office were towards aeroplanes.
Yes.
And perhaps even, high-speed cars, where they were beginning then to think about the true ergonomics of a driver's position. And so, to that extent, this was not terribly unlike an aircraft cockpit.
Yes.
What's it like seeing her again today?
Like a perfect boy's day out, really. Couldn't be better.
So, of course, the 125 group, they're working on this total refurbishment. How does that feel?
I think that's marvellous, because there's nothing like having a real understanding of history. It's a very romantic story, the whole history of the railways, and like it or not, there's a very, very high probability that people will be sitting in trains going between the cities of this country and all around the world in 100 years' time.
For the volunteers at the 125 group, the work goes on. They want the cab to be a special attraction at rail shows round the country. They're hoping that within 2 years, their project will be complete.
So, there's still a long way to go. But one day, that old girl will be back on the rails.
Well, that's it for tonight. Remember, if you've got a story that we should be telling, get in touch. We're on Twitter and Facebook. The details are on the screen. Make sure you join me next week when I find out whether the cost of driving is forcing us off the roads.